And now, a special edition of 22 News in Focus. New law enforcement strategies. Here's Don Shipman.
Welcome to 22 News in Focus. I'm Don Shipman. For the past 3 weeks, people across the country have been rallying to voice their concerns about issues surrounding police brutality, racial profiling, and qualified immunity. Many local residents and activists have organized their own marches, their protests, demonstrations as well, in support for communities of color. And today on 22 News in Focus, we are talking with two local police chiefs about what they're doing within their departments to create new strategies and training in response to a national call for improved law enforcement engagement. So joining me now is Northampton Police Chief Jody Kasper and Pittsfield Police Chief Michael Wynn. I want to thank you both for coming on the program. Now we should also mention that we invited the chiefs of police and commissioners from several other Western Massachusetts communities who were unable to take part in our program. So Western Massachusetts has had multiple demonstrations in the past few weeks. While some local police departments have had high-profile incidents involving their officers, most departments patrol their communities without much complaint from their residents. This week, President Trump signed an executive order to create a federal database for tracking officers with a history of excessive force and the need for higher standards in policing. And he also praised the majority of police officers as selfless public servants who place their lives in jeopardy every day while protecting our communities. Local, state, and federal legislatures, are also crafting legislation to create new policing protocols and standards. Each of your cities recently had protests. This is for both of you here. In one of the protests, of course, one in Northampton, seemed to get a little bit tense. In fact, there was some vandalism there. So I want to start with Chief Kasper. How did your officers handle that situation to prevent an escalation in any kind of violence and another protest the following week too?
Well, first, thanks for having me. The first protest that we had here in the city, we treated as we have past protests. And we're a community in Northampton that is known for having a lot of really involved citizens and gatherings of this sort, marches, protests, and vigils. And we've changed over the years in how we handle those. And essentially, we've really focused on just providing a safe space, blocking off roads, traffic, and providing security from a distance to give people their platform. And that's what we did during the first protest here that was a week and a half or so now on Monday. And this crowd was a little bit different. I would say that about 97% of the crowd was peaceful and here, outraged, sharing their different stories and experiences and talking about this national issue. But unfortunately, there were some people that, as you may have seen, many people have seen the video or seen the outcome of what happened. There was definitely vandalism. There was spray painting. We had broken cruisers, windshield smashed, window to our station smashed. Some officers who were not right at the protest but were at a distance away in a parking lot had rocks thrown at them. So we recognize that this issue and this climate right now is heightened. So when we prepared for the second protest, we did that a little bit differently. We really focused on wanting to create distance between the officers and the protesters. We wanted to have a really soft presence, meaning no riot helmets or any other riot gear, and have not a lot of officers around and not have any police cars around or anything that might escalate that crowd. What we noticed in the first protest is that when protesters began vandalizing something, it seemed to escalate the energy of the crowd. So we really wanted to work on de-escalating that. We had reached out to the organizers in this event on Saturday, and we had offered to walk with them in solidarity, but they said they didn't want that, and we respected that. So overall, we were pleased at the outcome of the second event, which was really large, thousands of people in our community on a really, tense and difficult subject for our country and our community. We were pleased with the outcome.
I want to go to Chief Wynn now. How did your officers respond to protests in your city?
So we've had 3 scheduled demonstrations so far and a couple more anticipated. And Pittsfield is a little bit different than Northampton. We have regular rallies or demonstrations in our small downtown Park Square common area, but they're generally fairly small and contained. Small groups. One group's been out there every Thursday night for 19 years, and so we don't see the large crowds, but we do have some experience with this, and our preparation actually started well ahead of time. We work with and meet regularly with our NAACP. I'm a member of the NAACP. So when they planned the first event, we, similar to what Chief Kasper said, we were just there to protect their First Amendment rights and give them space. And we, kept a respectful distance, and we were able to do that right up until practically the very end, when a small group decided they wanted to take over one of the intersections. And my shift commanders were quickly able to communicate with the organizers, who we know and have a relationship with. And we just pointed out to them that we weren't going to be able to protect them unless they gave us some time to put some traffic control measures in place. And they agreed. And so then we were able to bring some cruisers in to block off one travel lane to let them expand a little bit. And that kind of relieved the pressure. And we were able to end that one very peacefully and very successfully. This was kind of planned organically during the first one, and we didn't know the organizers. So again, similar to Chief Kasper, we took an even more low-profile approach and gave them space to gather and expand. But we didn't engage with them at all, and it ended as scheduled. The third one we were invited to participate in, and so I marched with the protesters and spoke at their demonstration in Durant Park, and that seemed to go very well. And we have one more that we know of scheduled for Sunday, and we're working with those organizers to facilitate the traffic flow for that event.
Chief Kasper, what are your thoughts on the current national, mood surrounding police using excessive force?
I certainly understand the outrage. We all watched that together as a country. We watched that video. We watched a man who was on the ground have a knee to his neck, multiple officers on him. We all asked those same questions. Why aren't they getting up? Why aren't they sitting him up? What's taking so long? Why is his knee there? So for us as police officers, obviously it's painful for us to watch as well. People wearing the same similar shirts and, uniforms as us engaged in this murder, and we know what's going on. We can see it. It's painful. And it clearly was something preventable, was unnecessary, was a crime. We all saw that together. So I understand the outrage that our communities have and that our country has. I think we all need to acknowledge as police leaders, decades past and present injustices to members of our community. And it's something that we need to work on. So I certainly understand why we are where we are today.
How does your department handle cases where there are complaints of excessive force from your officers? And has it changed due to what's been happening over the past 3 weeks?
We have a policy on internal affairs. So if there's a complaint that was ever filed against an officer, there's a process that we follow, and that is typically taken by the captain. They review it, they assign it to a supervisor for investigation. The matter is investigated in a set number of days, and then there's an outcome. In some cases, if it's a sustained policy violation, there would be discipline. We use progressive discipline, meaning that the first time someone does something, if it's a minor infraction, we go with a verbal or written warning for something, and that would escalate if the problem continued. Clearly, in more serious violations, we would not start with small disciplinary outcomes. But our goal is always to make sure the officer understands what was wrong about the action and to prevent it from happening in the future.
And I want to pose that same question to Chief Wynn as well. How do you handle that same situation in your department?
So we have a very similar process. We have an internal affairs process that's established in writing. Complaints come in and they're screened in by either myself or a senior member of my staff, and then they're assigned for investigation. If the complaint is sustained, then again, we utilize progressive discipline depending on the nature of the complaint, the severity of the complaint, and previous discipline in the officer's file. About 2 years ago, we then, at the request of a citizens group, the city formed a police advisory review board. So now, once the investigation is concluded and I've either the officer's been exonerated or I've carried out the discipline if it's sustained, all of those complaints after they've been closed, go to this police advisory review board for an external review, and they have the authority to ask questions, to send it back for further investigation, or to make recommendations to me or the mayor. So we have an additional layer of involvement with the new PARB.
We're going to continue our conversation once we return. You're watching 22 News in Focus. We're back here now, 22 News in Focus, and we are talking about what local police departments are doing to create new strategies and training for improved law enforcement. Now, in the earliest days of our nation, there were no police departments. The church and resident volunteers usually enforced laws and handed out judgments. But in 1838, the city of Boston created the first full-time police force to protect the city, especially businesses, as the city was a major commercial trading port. So policing has changed and evolved with the needs of our society. We want to believe that law enforcement falls under the ideas of to serve and to protect. Some critics, though, feel that the police culture is less about protection and more about enforcer. So I want to go back to Chief Wynn here. Do officers have a warrior mindset?
That's a great question. I mean, the national conversation for over 5 years has been a move away from the warrior mindset and more to a guardian mindset. Mm-hmm. And I think that there's a lot of value to that shift. And then when you try to define what is a guardian, and you take some of the tasks that we often expect our officers to do, like responding to active shooter incidents or violent crimes, then you kind of start to cross back over into that warrior mindset. It's a difficult balance. We expect a lot of our officers, and we throw a lot of different circumstances at them, and we expect them to rise to the occasion and behave professionally regardless of the circumstances they're responding to. But as part of procedural justice and police legitimacy, we have to remind our officers that we derive our any authority we have from the people of our community, and absent that, we don't have any authority at all. So it's important to remind them that we are there to serve and protect first.
All right, I want to continue the conversation here and chat as well with Chief Kasper on this very topic. How do you go about, I suppose, defining and managing this culture, warrior or protector?
Yeah, it's a great question. And as Chief Wynn mentioned, we've been making a transition over the years of recognizing the importance of the guardian mindset. And it is a very tricky balance because we ask officers to do a spectrum of activities, and probably 95% of them require a guardian mindset, and maybe a very small percentage might require a warrior mindset, like the chief mentioned. I think that the way that you enculturate this and bring this into your department really is at the hiring phase and your recruiting phase. You know, how are you recruiting? What are you showing in your recruiting? What are you highlighting? When you're doing your interviews, what questions are you asking, and what characteristics are you looking for, and what experiences are you looking for in the officers that you're hiring? I know for us, we have people come to us with all sorts of different experiences, and we have some people who have experience in social services already. Maybe they've worked with youth or worked with people who are struggling with addiction. And we gravitate toward those candidates because we know that they have empathy and they have understanding for working with special populations. So certainly that's something that we look for in that process. And I think the more of those people you bring into your department, the culture naturally changes as you have kind of different diversity of thought at the table.
What about when it comes to veterans? I know that oftentimes veterans will go into a police force after retiring from military. What does that bring to the police force? Yeah, we definitely have hired veterans over the years and people who have military experience. And I think years ago there was even more of an effort to do that because our profession was geared more toward the warrior mindset, and there were parallels that could be made. But I think we can all agree that over the last 5, 6, 7 years, there's been a transition away from that. And we still love our veteran and military folks who come to us. And they are part of an environment where there's a balance of different perspectives. They
often come to us with great discipline and recognition of organizational structure, a lot of great interpersonal skills and maturity that sometimes we wouldn't get if someone hadn't had that experience. So there's definitely great benefits of hiring people with military experience. We have a lot of great officers who have that experience and have been deployed and have served, and they have interesting and valuable cultural perspectives as well.
Over the past, I want to say maybe 10 years, maybe even more, there's been a stronger emphasis on cell phones. Everyone has a cell phone. Everyone has a camera. So many people are using their cell phones to take video. How has that changed the way you police, or does it?
No, not particularly. I mean, if you're a great department and your officers are doing a great job, then people record us doing great things. And that's how I've always felt. If you are running a great police department and your officers are doing a fantastic job, and I believe that mine are, I'm honored to work with the people that I have in this building, and they really provide a high level of professional service on the street. If people record them doing that, that's great. Our only ask is that if people are recording us, they're just careful to not be involved in situations or stand in traffic or, be in a way that creates a level of increased safety for anyone.
And what about you, Chief Wynn? Do you have conversations with your officers about people recording your officers? And then also on the other side of that, many police departments are using body cameras. Is your department doing that?
So regarding the cell phones, it's interesting. Before cell phones became widespread, and they were out there, but they didn't have all the camera technology. I used to teach at the academy, and I used to tell my students, in the recruit officers class, if you wouldn't want to read about it in the morning news, or you wouldn't want to tell your grandparents about it, don't do it, right? You're under scrutiny. And now we tell students, if you don't want to see it on YouTube or TikTok, don't do it, because you're always being recorded. And we had early experience with this in Pittsfield, with people posting some videos of us, and we just tell all of our officers all the time, you should always believe you're being recorded and conduct yourself professionally and accordingly. So we don't mind. Similar to Chief Kasper, we like when people show us video of our people doing great stuff, and it's just a reality. Pittsfield does not use body cameras. We've been waiting to see the results of the Boston PD pilots. There's still some real unclear legal areas in Massachusetts with body cameras. And my mid-sized department, we don't have a full-time legal department, so I don't want to be the one to try to defend that and establish the case law. So we're waiting to see what happens with the larger departments.
What about you, Chief Kasper? Are you utilizing body-worn cameras on your officers?
We are not. We've looked at them over the years. There's been a number of incidents here where we kind of wish we had them, which has been the catalyst for us to look into body-worn cameras. Much like Chief Wynn, we have our concerns about public records and release and redactions and all those sorts of things. And there's also a recent study that came out of George Mason University. It just came out in May. And it was a study of 70 other studies on body cameras, and basically was looking into, are these valuable or are they not? Because I think when we're talking about some of the issues that we're talking about nationally, one of the things you always see is put body cameras on. Everybody wants body cameras, but what is the research behind that? The George Mason University study found that they may not be the solution that we really want them to be. They don't have as much impact as people would think. And I mean, I would use the George Floyd case as a perfect example. That officer was there, not wearing a body camera, but being recorded. The behavior still occurred, right? And he knew he was being recorded. So I think there's more to this national issue and dialogue that we're talking about, rather than just putting cameras on people. We really want to make sure that when we're doing something, it's evidence-based, and we really want to do something that's going to be effective for our departments, and also be thoughtful about the fact that it can be very expensive to have these programs, especially with the staffing element of it that you may need in order to respond to public records requests and produce the type of video that might be asked of us.
All right, once we return, we are going to be discussing the importance of community policing. And what is community policing? You're watching 22 News in Focus. We're back here now. 22 News in Focus. Our program's topic is on how local police departments can create new strategies and training for improved law enforcement. Old movies and TV shows from the mid 20th century show cops walking the beat. Some departments even had mounted patrols for crowd control ceremonies, as well as public relations tools too. So today we call that community policing, and there are police patrols on bicycles and neighborhood satellite offices. Many police departments offer special events such as baby seat installations and bicycle training and child identification programs, all in an effort really to create partnerships with their communities. I want to begin with Chief Kasper, and I want to get a better understanding of what happens in the city of Northampton on all of this. Do you have officers that are patrolling, say, on foot or bicycle?
We do, yes. We've had a foot patrol officer for as long as I've ever worked for the department. And we have a busy downtown, so we really have the perfect application for a foot patrol, which is really, we have one 24 hours a day. So by day, the person that's on walks around, checks in on businesses, and by night really checks on those same businesses, any signs of break and entering, of vandalism, and provides a sense of security for people in the downtown area. So we still have a foot patrol, and I enjoyed my days on foot patrol. I think it's a really important part of what we provide to the community.
And what about you, Chief Wynn? What happens in your city? Are officers on foot? Are they on bicycles there?
So unfortunately, we rarely have a foot patrol, and our bicycle patrols for the last several years have been restricted to special activities or special events. We're dealing with a pretty significant staffing shortage and have been for several years. And being a 911 driven agency, it takes away some of our utility. So we like to have foot patrols, particularly during large scale events, and we use our mountain bike patrols as tools when we can. But our approach to community policing is a little broader. We expect all of our officers to engage in community policing. I expect all of my patrol officers to visit their elementary schools on their beat. We do regular checks in our community organizations. We have officers on the day shift who will go to our meal sites. Outside of the pandemic, it's a regular practice for me to walk in some mornings and look at the desk sergeant and say, have these two officers meet me at this location. We're going to do coffee with a cop for an hour. And they go and they answer residents' questions. We really try to make it part and parcel of our operational culture.
Do you have any specific initiatives that you do in the city? I know you mentioned coffee with a cop and stuff like that, also officers going into elementary schools, but any specific initiatives that really get the community one-on-one time and face-to-face time with your officers?
So we do the coffee with a cop. We try to do those monthly when coffee shops and community locations are open. The school checks are something we implemented. We're involved in two neighborhood initiatives in our Morningside community and our Westside community, where we regularly attend their initiative meetings. Our community outreach or safety officers do that. We have we don't manage it. We schedule appointments at a community outpost that was established by the Westside Initiative in a public building or a private building down off of one of our parks. And then one of the cool things that we borrowed from some of our colleagues out east is a couple years ago, we also invested in our own ice cream truck for our Operation Copsicle program. So we deploy Popsicle One out into the community every once in a while.
Whatever works.
All right, Chief Kasper, what about you? Any specific initiatives? You mentioned that officers are on bicycles, officers are walking the sidewalks there in Northampton's downtown, but what other specific initiatives do you have with your officers so they can have that one-on-one time with the community?
I think Northampton PD, it's one of the things that we're known for is our community outreach initiatives and programming. And I think there's different levels, there's walking the beat, there's bike patrol, there's having like coffee with a cop, which we have, which really does allow an opportunity for people to have contact with us that they don't normally get. And it's positive contact, and we get to listen to people and, have good conversation. But we have a fishing derby every year. We do a citizen police academy where we invite people into the building and they attend for 7 or 8 weeks and learn about our department. We have a ride-along program. We have different liaisons to different members of our community. But I think, one of the community policing programs that I think I'm probably proudest of are the ones that are really collaborative efforts with community members. And a great example is our DART program, which is a drug addiction response team, where we work with stakeholders from other service providers in our city, and we provide follow-up service after an overdose or if someone's at high risk. It's a harm reduction model where we go out into the community and try to connect people to different resources. So we also have the Open Data Initiative, where we worked with community members to talk about transparency in the police department and what kind of data they'd like us to produce. We've produced that. So different types of community policing, some that I would describe as a low-hanging fruit that's, we're out there, it's nice to do with people and see folks. And then some that are really collaborative, working together and addressing some of the major issues going on in policing.
What about satellite offices? Do you have those in your city?
We do not, no.
Then my other quick question to you as well is, we've been hearing a lot from different school districts across the country. This is happening in light of everything that's been happening over the past 3 weeks and the death of George Floyd, is a push to get officers, resource officers, out of schools. One, do you have resource officers in Northampton schools? And two, do you think it's a good idea to have those officers in the schools? Or do you think it's a good idea to kind of rethink that?
So yes, we do have a high school resource officer and middle school. So we have many schools, elementary schools, they do not have a school resource officer, but we have a full-time school resource officer who's been working in the high school and middle school and swaps his days on where he is. I think the work of a school resource officer, if they're doing it right, is probably pretty misunderstood. School resource officers spend a lot of time doing relationship building and being a resource in the school that kids, don't have without that SRO. And they ask a lot of questions. They may be having some issues at home that involve substance use or domestic violence or other forms of abuse. And the school resource officer is really someone they can go to. So I understand that the national push and the reason why, but what's nice about a school resource officer is they have specialized training in working with juveniles and with juvenile issues, and they have established relationships with school administrators. So if you pull the school resource officer out of the school, and then you call the police, you're going to get another officer who's probably great, but who doesn't have that same specialized training and relationships. So I think the benefit of the school resource officer is it's someone who really understands how schools work, what their values are, and can work within that.
And then what about Pittsfield? I wonder about that too. And then also I wonder, do these school resource officers carry a weapon into the school? So Chief Wynn.
So Pittsfield has had a school resource officer program in some capacity since the late 80s. And I don't want it to sound like I'm making light of this line of questioning, because it's very serious, but it's ironic for me because about 6 months ago, looking at our staffing issue, I had to propose a plan to take our school resource officers out of the school to meet staffing needs. And there was tremendous outcry from the community. It was the topic of conversation at city council meetings and school committee meetings. And there was a small vocal minority at that time was like, there shouldn't be officers in the school. And they had no idea what the school resource officers training was or what their experience was. And similar to what Chief Kasper just said, our school resource officers are highly trained, specially trained, and they provide a communication route for police officers that isn't ordinarily there. When our patrol officers deal with adolescents in the community, it's always better if we can make an introduction by mentioning their school resource officer, if they can ask us about the school resource officer. So there's a tremendous value to the program, but you do have to be careful to select people for that assignment who are carefully screened and selected for the right reasons, and they do have to be trained. You can't simply take a patrol officer and put him in the school and call it a school resource officer. But yes, to your final question, yes, school resource officers are armed. They are police officers, duty bound, and should something happen in the school, around the school, or away from the school, they need to be able to function as a police officer.
But do you understand the mindset, the idea of questioning whether this is a good idea, especially concerning everything that's been happening and the idea of, we're going to talk about this a little bit later on in the program, but defunding the police. There's a lot of calls to change the way we police. So do you understand that point of view and that line of questioning?
I certainly understand it, and I appreciate that perspective, and I even can, honor that perspective. But if you want a police department to provide this service, you're going to get a police officer. There's models out there where there are liaison officers or security officers or school department personnel who are assigned as part of the security plan, and it's not a police officer. And those models have value and they work as well. But if the district is going to ask the police department to provide this service, you're going to get a police officer. In Pittsfield, we fully fund the school resource officers, so they're coming from our staff.
All right, fair enough. We're going to be talking about how police departments train their recruits, new recruits. You're watching 22 News in Focus. Back here now, 22 News in Focus. Our program's topic is how local police departments can create new strategies and training for improved law enforcement. Police reform is not a new idea. There's been a lot of discussion about improved training for everything from de-escalation tactics to how to subdue suspects without injury, to being more aware of a person's mental health issues. Some new recruits have only basic training from the police academy, no college degree or work experience in law enforcement. So I want to begin with Chief Wynn here on this one, because as an experienced law enforcement professional with decades of experience here, what would you like to see coming out of police training and out of the academy?
I think as a nation and as an industry, we need to take a real hard look at what we expect of our new police officers and what we expect of training. We're basically using a vocational model to produce a professional with a high degree of responsibility. In my career as a trainer, I've had the opportunity to train alongside law enforcement officers from all over the world. And I know in some European countries, policing requires a 2-year degree or a 4-year degree, and a lot more both classroom training and sociological training and hands-on training. In Massachusetts is highly trained compared to the national standard, and we're barely scratching the surface. So we don't require a college degree to become a police officer in the Commonwealth across the board. I think there's a lot of merit to exploring that. I certainly think that the basic training should be lengthened, and I think that the requirements for regular in-service training should also be increased.
That was going to be my next question. What additional training does your department offer?
So when our recruits get out, or our student officers get out of the academy, they have an additional 14 weeks of field training with our training staff before they can go on solo patrol. And then we have regular in-service training on a nearly constant basis. So we have to do all of the required annual training from the MPTC, the Municipal Police Training Committee, and any other topics that I and my training staff decide need to be covered. So we train constantly.
I want to go to Chief Kasper on this next one and further discuss this. In your professional experience, what type of training methods do you find that are essential for a police officer?
These jobs are so incredibly complex. The things that we are asking police officers to do, and we talked about that before, going from being prepared to go into an active shooter situation, to responding to a drug overdose and giving Narcan, to CPR, to a bank robbery, to sitting and having a really important conversation with someone who's struggling with something maybe in their home, to domestic violence and sexual assault. It is hard to imagine the single person that is perfectly prepared, regardless of the training, to deal with all of that. I mean, it's an incredibly complex job. So I would totally second what Chief Wynn is saying about the importance of an education. At our department, we require a 2-year degree. Most of our people have their 4-year degree. It's incredibly important that you have an academic understanding around some of these important issues, studying, sociology, psychology, procedural justice, criminal justice. I mean, this is what our field is, and it's complex. So it's hard for me to imagine a training that would produce a police officer that would be exactly what we need the day they get out. A lot of what's important is what our officers learn in field training in that 14 weeks. That's the experience you get. That's when you start to understand why people do what they do, develop empathy and understand how to do this job. It's very challenging.
And you mentioned those mental health calls. You mentioned Narcan, drug-related instances like that, and your officers responding to that. Do you think that officers should be responding to that? Could that be, would it be better to have someone that is a trained social worker responding to perhaps someone who has a mental health issue or perhaps someone who has a drug overdose?
Yeah, I appreciate that question. I know it's a national issue right now. And I have to tell you, I would love to have 5 social workers on my department right now that are ready to go out and be there for us when we need it. I will tell you this, we respond to a large number of calls that involve people with mental health, and we respond to facilities with specialists. They're calling us. So there is a safety element that we have to be thoughtful about when we consider these calls. There are some calls with folks who, yes, we go to their apartment a lot. There's probably not much of a safety issue. They're struggling. They need to connect with crisis, and we make that connection for them. But there are others who there is a safety element, and we've reached out to some crisis workers sometimes, and they don't feel comfortable going into the person's home. So while I'm interested in exploring the addition of social workers as crisis responders, I'm wary and knowledgeable about the fact that there is sometimes a safety element on these scenes.
And Chief Wynn, what about you? Because I wonder what you think about this. Do you like this conversation that's happening right now when it comes to maybe taking some of that burden off of your officers and saying, you know, this might be better suited for a social worker to respond to a mental health call or a drug overdose?
So I can actually speak to this because Pittsfield Police Department is incredibly fortunate. We're about 4 years into a community program, a community partnership with our mental health provider here in Berkshire County, the Brien Center. And we have, for 40 hours a week, a Brien Center clinician assigned to the police department who will respond to radio calls and go out in the field with our officers, or in some cases, instead of our officers. And we love having Mr. Collins available to us. We would love to expand that program. And actually, as a result of some budget decisions that were made Monday night, we're going to look to expand that program in the coming year. But I had a conversation with Mr. Collins about this yesterday, and just as Chief Kasper was saying, most social workers don't want to go into an unsecured, unknown environment first. And so it's a partnership, and it needs to be a partnership because, well, the person may be in crisis. We don't know what else is going on in that environment. And if there's a risk, it's not responsible to ask a social worker to go do that alone. So it's a partnership. It works very well. One of my commanders asked Mr. Collins if we could clone him yesterday because he's only available to us 40 hours a week, and we would love to have him every minute of the day. It's been a highly successful program, and one of the things that has been a tangible benefit from a chief's office point of view is our number of mental health transports by cruiser went down about 60% after we started working with Mr. Collins. And that's a huge benefit to the patient. It's a huge benefit to the crisis unit at the hospital. But from a liability point of view, from an agency point of view, it's a massive benefit to us. Those are patients that don't need to be handcuffed and transported. That's a huge win.
We're going to continue our conversation once we return. You're watching 22 News in Focus. Hi there once again, 22 News in Focus. Now our program's topic is about local police departments creating new strategies and training for improved law enforcement engagement. We're being joined by Chief Kasper and Chief Wynn, both from local municipalities here, Northampton and Pittsfield. I want to talk a little bit about defunding the police. A lot of protesters have been either talking about defunding or even abolishing police departments. Chief Kasper, I want to start with you. When you hear protesters chanting defund the police, how do you interpret that? How do you understand that?
Great question again. I mean, this is like the word that's going around the country right now, and certainly in my community right now, there is a budget hearing going on, and that is the question of what does it mean to defund the police? And I know that there's a variety of different understandings of exactly what that means. And my interpretation of defunding the police means taking money out of the police budget and putting it towards social services that would be providing support to many of the folks that we might end up dealing with. So providing more support for people who don't have homes, for people struggling with addiction, for people with mental health. So that's my understanding of defunding. I think, it's curious to want to explore this and to re-envision policing. I'm very wary, as we both spoke before, about there are safety factors. And I think one thing that I learned when I listened to so many people talk about defunding is that a lot of people really don't understand what a day in the life of a police officer is like. And there needs to be that collaboration and sharing of information so that people have an understanding of what our officers really do. I think our days are very different than what people think they really are.
Whose fault do you think that is?
Well, I mean, how well do we know anyone else's job? I can guess what you do, but I don't really know, and that's just, we all can't always be educating everyone on everything, right? But we can see that this is important. We are a public service, and it's very important for people to know what we really do. And we do things like offer the Citizen Police Academy, but it's a big ask to ask someone to give up, one night a week for 7 weeks. That's a lot of sitting and learning about your local police department. So, clearly we could do better about putting out what we're really doing and what our jobs are really like. But there does have to be an honest interest from a recipient who wants to learn about it and really wants to better understand how we provide public safety services to the city.
And Chief Wynn, I want to bring you in on this too. Defunding the police. What is your understanding when you hear that being chanted at those protests? How do you understand that?
So again, this is an interesting question, and I'm not sure that there's agreement even among the protesters calling for defunding on what defunding means. It runs the gamut from totally abolishing police departments to removing resources from police department budgets and reallocating them. And I've had this conversation with several members of my community leaders. And just to be clear, I don't know any police officer who thinks that important societal issues or societal ills like homelessness, substance abuse, mental illness don't need more resources, education. They all need more resources. But if you take them from the police department, my question has been, what's the negative impact going to be on those agencies? I know what it's like in Pittsfield and Berkshire County, and I'm sure it's similar in Northampton and any other community that's not a large metropolitan area. Under the system we have, we're the point of entry to many of these other social service systems. My police department is the transportation for our homeless shelter. My police department helps process the restraining order applications for victims who eventually will go into our women's service shelter or our rape crisis shelter. My police department is the intake for some of our other social service agencies. These are small agencies with limited budgets. If we couldn't help them, their services would suffer as well.
I feel like you're actually demonstrating the argument for the protesters there, because I think that they would say that your officers don't need to be doing that. That money could go to social services. They should be transporting the homeless to a homeless shelter or helping someone who's being abused.
And if they had the capacity to do that, I would support them in doing that. But at 3 o'clock in the morning, in a small municipality that doesn't have any of these facilities open, who's going to do that?
And to you, Chief Kasper, what about you? How do you feel about that? If they were to take some funding from your police department, so your police department didn't have to respond to someone with a drug overdose, and that other agency had the funding, which gave them the training to do that, would that be something you would be okay with?
Yes, well, a drug overdose is a medical call. We do have ambulances that respond to medical calls. It's the challenge is not, we all agree specialists should be going on many of these calls that we're talking about, right? Ideally, I would love to have a housing specialist that can go help someone who's dealing with homelessness and connect them with services. And I would love that. But exactly to Chief Wynn's point, they're not on at 3 a.m. And that is the challenge. If you wanted to have, say, a housing specialist that was able to take all the housing related calls 24 hours a day, that means you've got to have people working 24 hours a day. They need transportation. They need to be on call. So that's where you start to get into the challenges, is some of these calls that we're talking about, they don't just happen during business hours when some of these specialists might typically be working. So it does present some challenges, and those challenges are expensive.
But I can hear people at home right now yelling at the screen saying, that's what we're saying. That is defunding the police. That money would go to that other agency and they would be able to have a larger staff that could be working 24/7 to answer those types of calls.
Totally get that. The problem is at the same time, you've got a drunk driver that crashes into a pole in a domestic violence call. And at the end of the day, we have to have, there's minimum requirements to send officers on those calls. One domestic violence call is 2 officers and a supervisor. If I have half my budget, then that's the whole shift. What happens when someone needs CPR or gets into a major car accident, or there's another domestic, or someone's, committing another crime? So that's the challenge, is there are other calls that we are attending to all the time that we have to be able to respond to.
What is your message to the protesters, specifically protesters who are saying defund the police?
I think my message is, certainly we have listened. I have been listening to all of in our community, our public comments. I've listened to all of their demands, their requests, their experiences. And I appreciate their honesty, and I get the vision that many people have. And there'll be an effort to explore that more, in our community. And that's my hope anyway. And I think at the end of the day, we have common ground in the sense that we all want to provide the best services that we can to our community, but communities do have a limited budget, and we have to be realistic about that. So that's my message. I think there is common ground. I think we all have that same interest to take good care of our community members and our visitors.
Chief Wynn, what about Pittsfield? Are your thoughts on that? What do people not know about your police department?
Well, I think, there's a lot of things people don't know about our police department. And it's one of the reasons that we're constantly trying to educate our community. We're out in the community, we're using social media. But to the underlying question, my response has been to the people who are calling to defund police departments, okay, I hear you. And I can see your perspective. And if you can show me a model that will work, okay, maybe that's worth exploring and we can get there. But today, in the system that we have, when people want help, they call 911. And when they call 911, they don't expect to hear my dispatchers and my officers say, we're going to put you on hold and we're going to send you somebody who may not be on call or may not answer the phone. They expect a response. And that's a service, going back to protect and serve, that we're expected and required to provide. Can we provide more options and more suitable or more beneficial outcomes? Yeah, but people expect us to come.
All right, you mentioned system, and I think that's the big key word right there, system that we have right now, and some people want to change that system. We're gonna have the last word right after the break. You're watching 22 News in Focus. You're watching 22 News in Focus. Today's discussion has been about what local police departments are doing to create new strategies and training for improved law enforcement engagement. And that is our program for today. I want to thank both of our guests, Chief Kasper and Chief Wynn. Thanks for coming on the program.
Thanks for having us.
And if you missed any of this, of course, you can find it at our website at wwlp.com. Have a good day.